say something. So that's his kindness on me that he's giving me. It's very purifying service actually to speak on, to try to say something on Bhagavatam. So I'm grateful for this. I don't know if it's possible to have like, I mean, I like to see Gaur Nitai, but I don't know if it's possible that we can see the devotees. Like to turn the camera to see the devotees. I don't know.
Yeah,
Otherwise, it's all right.
we have just one camera in the temple.
Okay.
Yeah. We
No
can ask
problem.
devotees to turn camera for temporarily.
They're not too
to see.
shy.
Yeah.
Anyway. So, but yeah, I would like to offer my obeisances to the devotees. And so, yeah, I was there. Was it last month or something? It was nice to be in Ottawa after all this time after COVID. It was a short visit, but I was happy still that I got the chance to go. So today, I don't know, is the sound okay, Prabhu? Because there's a big kirtan behind me, like in the.
There's a lot of feedback from the kirtan.
Oh yeah, but is it like, can you hear me properly?
Yes, it's okay.
Yeah. Okay, so I was thinking to read a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, if that's okay. But just before that, maybe we can just offer a few Mangalacharan prayers. Om Agyanat Nirandasya Gyananjana Sharakaya Chakshurunmitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauradvishe Namaha Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, so Hare Krishna. So today we'll read from a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, because actually just the context why I was thinking of reading this verse is there was a devotee who came to the temple 2 days ago, and actually he's living like out there in the forest, like few hours north of Montreal, and so he was speaking to me, this devotee, and he was saying that he's been reading a lot Bhagavad Gita. And anyway, we were speaking of a few things, and I asked him, did you ever read Srimad Bhagavatam? And he told me, he said, I never read Srimad Bhagavatam. Personally, he says, I don't really want to read Bhagavatam, and I'm just very satisfied with the Bhagavad Gita. And anyway, it kind of created a feeling with me. I was thinking, if you really, get in the Bhagavad Gita and chant, like, I couldn't understand why someone wouldn't want to get into the Srimad Bhagavatam. So then, while thinking of this, I thought, oh, maybe I can try to say something about this, about the glories of Srimad Bhagavatam. Why, as devotees, it's very important that we develop this relationship with the Srimad Bhagavatam. So, in order to elaborate on that, I was thinking maybe we can read from the second verse of the Bhagavatam, which explains a little bit what the Bhagavatam is about and why it's relevant, actually, not only for devotees, but for anyone. So I'll just start by reading the Sanskrit, and then I'll read the translation and a little part of the purport, because honestly it's a long purport and we have to stay proactive. So I'll read the Sanskrit. Dharma projita kaita votra paramo nirmatsaranam satam vedyam vastava matra vastu shivadam tapantrayon mulanam Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite kim va parerishvara sadyoridya varudyate trakritibi sushushubis kakshanahat. So Shoulda Vyasadev says, I get the translation because he says, completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated. This Bhagavat Purana propounds the highest truth, which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart. The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. Such truth uproots the threefold miseries. This beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadev in his maturity, is sufficient in itself for God realization. What is the need of any other scripture? As soon as one attentively and submissively hear the message of Bhagavatam, by this culture of knowledge, the Supreme Lord is established within his heart. So that was not the purport, that was the verse. That's a long verse. I'll just read just a few paragraphs of the purport by Srila Prabhupada. So Srila Prabhupada writes, the Srimad Bhagavatam is a personal commentation on the Vedanta Sutra by Srila Vyasadev. It was written in the maturity of his spiritual life through the mercy of Narada. Sri Vyasadev is the authorized incarnation of Narayan, the personality of Godhead. Therefore, there is no question as to his authority. He is the author of all other Vedic literatures, yet he recommends the study of Srimad Bhagavatam above all others. In other Puranas, there are different methods set forth by which one can worship the demigods, but in the Bhagavatam only, the Supreme Lord is mentioned. The Supreme Lord is the total body, and the demigods are the different parts of that body. Consequently, by worshipping the Supreme Lord, one does not need to worship the demigods. The Supreme Lord becomes fixed in the heart of the devotee immediately. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has recommended the Srimad Bhagavatam as the spotless Purana and distinguishes it from all other Puranas. The proper method for receiving this transcendental message is to hear it submissively. A challenging attitude cannot help one realize this transcendental message. One particular word is used herein for proper guidance. This word is sushrushu. One must be anxious to hear this transcendental message. The desire to sincerely hear is the first qualification. Less fortunate persons are not at all interested in hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam. That's just a bit connected to why we're reading this today, the context I was explaining. Less fortunate persons, they don't want to hear Bhagavatam. The process is simple, but the application is difficult. Unfortunate people find enough time to hear idle social and political conversations, but when invited to attend a meeting of devotees to hear Srimad Bhagavatam, they suddenly become reluctant. Sometimes professional readers of the Bhagavatam immediately plunges into the confidential topics of the pastimes of the Supreme Lord, which they seemingly interpret as sex literature. The Srimad Bhagavatam is meant to be heard from the beginning. Those who are fit to assimilate this work are mentioned in this shloka. One becomes qualified to hear Srimad Bhagavatam after many pious deeds. The intelligent person with thoughtful discretion can be assured by the great sage Vyasadeva that he can realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead directly by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. Without undergoing the different stages of realization set forth in the Vedas, one can be lifted immediately to the position of Paramahamsa simply by agreeing to receive this message. Hare Krishna. So just before I say anything, I just wanted to say I forgot to just offer my obeisances to Guru Prasad Prabhu, who is here. He's a very senior, very kind devotee. Hare Krishna. So yes,
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Nice to have you again here with us.
Thank you, Prabhu. So the Srimad Bhagavatam. Actually, Sanatan Goswami, those who don't know, who's a very dear associate of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he wrote some prayers to the Srimad Bhagavatam. And I want to read one particular. There's 5 prayers. I'll read just one because it's a very nice prayer. He says, Mad Eka Bando Mad Sangin Mad Guru Man Mahadana Man Nishtaraka Mad Bhagya Madananda Namostute. He says, Oh Srimad Bhagavatam, Mad Eka Bando, you're my only friend. Mad Sangin, my companion. Mad Guru, my teacher. Man Mahadana, my great wealth. Man Nishtaraka, my deliverer. Mad Bhagya, my good fortune. Mad Ananda, my bliss. So I offer respectful obeisances to this Bhagavatam, who is all these things from my friend, my teacher, my wealth, my bliss. And this is a point which is stated in the beginning of the Bhagavatam, that the Srimad Bhagavatam is actually meant to be relished. The Srila Radha Govinda Maharaj is very senior devotee who speaks on Srimad Bhagavatam, and he was asked one day, how do you prepare for a Bhagavatam class? And Maharaj, he says, I don't prepare. He says, I relish Bhagavatam. So that was his attitude towards the Bhagavatam. And this is why even the third verse of the Bhagavatam, it says that this Bhagavatam actually is bringing the aspect of rasa. So this Bhagavatam is meant to be relished by the rasikas, by those who are able to taste the nectar, by those who received enough mercy, who made enough spiritual advancement that they're able to understand that the Srimad Bhagavatam is not just some ordinary literature. Actually, in the verse that we just read, the second verse of the Bhagavatam, it starts by saying, Dharma Projita Kaitava. That the Bhagavatam rejects what's called Kaitava Dharma. Kaitava Dharma means the processes of religion which are materially motivated. Actually, if one studies the Bhagavad Gita, how is the Bhagavad Gita ending? The Bhagavad Gita is ending with 1866. Sarva Dharman Parityaja Mamekam Sharanam. Abandon, Krishna says, abandon all varieties of dharmas. So this is how the Bhagavad Gita stops, and it's also how the Bhagavatam begins. So this is the connection actually. So one who really understands the essence of Bhagavad Gita, then naturally he will develop the desire to go into the Srimad Bhagavatam. So that's one aspect, that the Bhagavatam won't tell you, how to make money or how to get this and that. But the Bhagavatam is meant to smash our material attachment, and not only smash our material attachment, but to impregnate our heart with Krishna consciousness. By hearing the Bhagavatam, this verse says, Krishna comes into our heart. And when Krishna comes into our heart, then naturally the heart becomes purified. Actually, Sutta Goswami, when he started to answer the questions of the sages in the Naimisharanya forest, he said this, that when one becomes fortunate enough to serve a Mahatma, an advanced devotee, who comes in contact with devotee, but not only comes in contact, but engages in devotional service, assists these devotees in their service to Krishna, then there's a side effect, which is that one develops Vasudeva Kataruchi. He develops a taste for hearing Krishna Katha. And to the degree, it says, Sutta Goswami explains that to the degree that one has this taste to hear about Krishna, then to that degree, Krishna in his heart will purify his heart. So then we can understand how important it is, that somehow or other, we come to the point of appreciating this talk about Krishna. And actually, it would be wrong to say that the Bhagavad Gita doesn't touch this subject, because the Bhagavad Gita chapter 9, which is known as the most confidential chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, because the title is like the most confidential secret or most confidential knowledge. And oh no, actually it's right after this, right after telling all this confidential knowledge, there's what's called the Chatur Shloki of the Bhagavad Gita, which are the four, let's say if you throw the Bhagavad Gita, which nobody wants to do, well, let's say it would happen, and there would be 4 verses left. Then these would be the 4 verses. Chapter 10, verse number 8, 9, 10, 11. So chapter 10, verses 8, 9, 10, 11. You want to look after. And the second verse, verse number 9, explains what does it mean to attain the perfectional stage of devotional service. And Krishna tells Arjuna, Machita Madgata Prana Bodhayanta Parasparam Katayantascha Mam Nityam Tushyanticha Ramanticha. He says that the pure devotees, they're engaged in some particular activities. And what's this activity? Is that they always think of me and they also speak about me. And by speaking about me, Katayantascha Mam Nityam, by speaking about Krishna like this, then Tushyanticha Ramanticha, they derive great bliss from this conversing about Krishna. So straight in the Bhagavad Gita, it's explained that this is what it means to make spiritual advancement. Actually, Shoulda Vyasadev, who wrote the Bhagavad Gita, after he wrote the Bhagavad Gita, he was still not satisfied. Because we hear in the beginning of the Bhagavatam, right, in the first canto, it says that Vyasadev, he composed the Mahabharata. What's the Mahabharata? You know, the Bhagavad Gita is in the Mahabharata. So he composed the Mahabharata and all Puranas, the 4 Vedas, and so on. And still after, he was not satisfied. So it means even after he wrote the Bhagavad Gita, he was still not satisfied. And his spiritual master, Narada Muni, he told him that there's a reason why you're not satisfied. And that this reason is that you didn't speak enough about Krishna. You didn't glorify Krishna. And you can philosophize and do this and that, but if the attention doesn't completely go to Krishna, then the heart will not be completely satisfied. And one could argue, actually in his commentary on this chapter, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he writes that, yeah, one could say that, well, Vyasadev wrote, the Padma Purana and other such, the Sattvic Puranas, which speak about Krishna. So we cannot say that he didn't speak about Krishna before writing the Bhagavatam. But Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he says that the point is not that he didn't say anything about Krishna and Krishna's pastimes and glorify devotional service, but the point that Narada Muni made to him is that he didn't do it enough. And that's the thing. I mean, we, to some degree, we're all engaged. I mean, all those who are here, we're all engaged to some degree in devotional activities. And to that degree, then we're deriving Yayatma Suprasidati. We're developing some satisfaction of the heart. But it doesn't mean that we cannot become more absorbed, more deeply absorbed, or more absorbed for longer periods of time. And to the degree that we're more deeply absorbed and we're absorbed for longer periods of time, then we're going to feel more satisfaction. So Narada Muni, that's what he was saying to Shoulda Vyasadev. It's not that everything you did was useless. You glorified Krishna, from time to time. But the point is that if you really want to feel more satisfied, then you have to expand, this part of your work, this part of your life, which is based on this glorification of the Lord. And actually, the Bhagavatam is very much focusing on this. The sages in the Naimisharanya forest, they approached Sutta Goswami and they asked him, originally they asked him six questions in the beginning of the Bhagavatam. They asked him, first question, they ask, what is the Shreyas? What is the ultimate good, for people in this world? Which is a very relevant question. And of course, the answer is bhakti, which Sutta Goswami explains in the second chapter. And then he asked, there's so many scriptures. And, it takes a long time. They say it takes so much time to go through all the scriptures. But so can you just tell us, what's the essence of all the scripture. And actually, this question is very relevant even for us. I mean, these sages, they were saying that they didn't have enough time to go through all the scriptures. You know, it's not that they had like so many things to do. Like they were sages in the forest, you know, they only had this to do, to go over all the scriptures. But still, they considered that, you know, it's a bit difficult to understand, you know, so many things. Just tell us what's the essence. Because they know that Sutta Goswami, they recognize the position of Sutta Goswami as being very advanced, self-realized devotee. And the self-realized devotees, they're known to be Paramahamsas. It means that they're able to extract the essence from something unclean. So they can see a bunch of scriptures which say all sorts of things, and they're able to go and get out the essence of all the scriptures, which is Krishna Bhakti, which the whole Bhagavatam speaks about, which the Bhagavad Gita establishes chapter after chapter by gradually taking out all of our misconceptions. So second question is, what's the essence of the scripture? And then they went on and they asked like three other questions, which were all about, can you tell us about Krishna's pastimes? Can you tell us about Krishna's avatars? Can you tell us about Krishna, the Purusha avatars, you know, all the incarnation of the expansions of Krishna, which maintain this material world, and so on. So the sages, they wanted to hear about two things, basically. They wanted to hear about, tell us about devotion to Krishna, and tell us about Krishna himself, his pastime, and so on. So the Bhagavatam focuses on this. It focuses on establishing our original position in relationship to Krishna. And actually in the second verse of the Bhagavatam, which we read in the beginning, Shoulda Vyasadev, he writes, he speaks about the Bhagavatam as being it can only be understood by those devotees who are fully pure in heart. So in one sense, that can seem a little bit discouraging because one might not like identify necessarily as a devotee who is pure in heart. But the thing is that in his commentary on this verse, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he says that, yeah, okay, the Bhagavatam is meant for those who are fully pure in heart, but the Bhagavatam is so great that just by hearing it, although we're not pure in heart, then gradually we become pure in heart. Because we hear also at the end of the Bhagavatam, it says that the Bhagavatam is for Paramahamsas. But this speaks about not only of a quality of the Bhagavatam, but a quality of bhakti itself. Is that the Bhagavatam is meant for the beginner and the more advanced at the same time. And bhakti, you know, bhakti is a process. You know, we do sadhana bhakti, we say. So we engage in devotional activities regulated under guidance and so on. But what's the goal of bhakti? The goal of bhakti is bhakti. So that's the point. The Bhagavatam, we take it when we're not pure. And when we're pure, what do? Do we throw the Bhagavatam and, you know, go sit and merge with nothing? No, when we become pure, then we continue, we get more and more absorbed in the Bhagavatam. The Bhagavatam means the pastimes of Krishna. Actually, the Bhagavatam, which we have access, is 18,000 verses. Srila Prabhupada says that the Bhagavatam in the heavenly planet is 80,000 verses. And other places, Srila Prabhupada says, actually, the Bhagavatam is unlimited. Because what does it mean, the Bhagavatam? It means the glories, the activities of Krishna and his devotees. And these are unlimited. There's no way, you cannot say, oh, the Bhagavatam, you know, is 18,000 verses or 80,000 verses. No, that's like limiting the glories of the Lord. It says that in the scripture, it says that Lord Ananta Shesh, with unlimited mouths, he's trying and trying and trying to glorify Krishna, but he's not able to arrive at the end of Krishna's glories. So, but what Lord Ananta is saying is equal to the Bhagavatam, because he's glorifying Krishna, he's glorifying his devotees, because there's no way you cannot glorify Krishna without speaking about Krishna in relationship with his devotees. But that's what the Bhagavatam is about, the glories of Krishna and his devotees. And just like bhakti, we do bhakti when we're not pure, and we do bhakti when we're pure. Of course, different quality of bhakti between the two. That's understandable. But this is in one sense also a glory of the Srimad Bhagavatam, is that whatever is our level of spiritual advancement, we can hear. And there's a verse in the Bhagavad Gita actually, which personally I find can give us a lot of hope in regards to the process of hearing. And in chapter 13 of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that there are different people who perceive the super soul in different ways. They perceive Krishna. Krishna says some they perceive Krishna through meditation. He says some they perceive Krishna through cultivation of knowledge. And others perceive Krishna through fruitive activities, karma. But Krishna says in the next verse, that's towards the end of the 13th chapter. He says that also there are some individuals who, although they don't have much knowledge, but they begin to worship Krishna by hearing about him from others. And Krishna says this sentence, which is very hopeful for us. He says that because they have this tendency to hear from authority, they can transcend the path of birth and death. So just because they have this tendency to hear from authorities. So, and Prabhupada he explains again in Nectar of Devotion that when you're so in trouble, like you're so conditioned, he gives the example of somebody who has been bitten by a snake and he's lying down unconscious. So Prabhupada says, there's nothing this person can do himself to, go out of his unconscious state. But he says there is one sense that's open, that's the ears. And he says, if there's some yogis who know some special mantras that if one has been bitten by a snake, they recite this mantra and they hear of the person who's lying down, and it brings the person back to consciousness. And Prabhupada gives this as a metaphor. He says that actually we've all been bitten by the snake, of material life. And the Maha Mantra is actually, the great devotees, they come and they propagate the Maha Mantra so that when we hear it, we can gradually extract the poison out of our system. And this is also what we do. Like when we go in the street, a lot of people, they don't notice, or maybe they don't understand so much what we're doing. But whether they understand or not, the medicine is acting. And even a few days ago, we were chanting in a certain place in Montreal. And every time we go to this place, there's a lady I guess she's coming back from work always at the same time when we're there. And she always stops and she says like, thank you so much. It's such good energy you're bringing. So, maybe, she doesn't understand exactly what's going on, but at least, she feels like, this is something very positive. Like she feels some positive vibration or something. But anyway, the point is that whether people are aware of what's going on or not, just by taking the medicine, they become purified. So in the same way, this is what's going on with the Bhagavatam. And by hearing, and that's what Prabhupada ends his purport on today's verse with, it says that if we hear submissively, then we can attain all perfection, not hearing with a challenging attitude. And that's a very important point. And Prabhupada he was saying, actually often he was saying that he said, if I have one qualification, is that he liked to hear his spiritual master. He said that and the spiritual master noticed this, because when Prabhupada came to take initiation, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, they said, okay, next person, the Abhay, sounds like Abhay Charan is coming. And Bhaktisiddhanta, when he saw him, he said, oh yes, he likes to hear. I noticed him because he likes to hear. And he was very happy Bhaktisiddhanta to have such a disciple. And Prabhupada, he was saying when he was hearing his spiritual master, he used the words, he said, he felt that he was saying in humility that, so I didn't understand much. I mean, Bhaktisiddhanta was like speaking like very like aristocratic language. Also, anyway, this is Prabhupada's humility. But he was saying, I didn't understand much of what was going on, but I would just hear. And he said, just by hearing, I would feel like my spiritual master would take away the curtain of the material energy, that was in front of my eyes, and would reveal to me the eternal pastimes of Radha and Krishna. So this is how Prabhupada felt, just by hearing. And Krishna starts the chapter 7, he says, just hear of the Bhagavad Gita. So like, just hear. So if we can just hear like this, but hear, not only hearing, but hearing with a certain attitude. Prabhupada starts the introduction of the Bhagavad Gita by saying this, that if one is a very strong atheist or something, at least theoretically, he should read the Bhagavad Gita with the kind of inclination that there might be, Krishna might be God, and maybe that's where these verses, this is what he has to tell me. Maybe yes, maybe not, but at least be open to maybe this is Krishna, and maybe this is what he has to say. And this favorable, unchallenging attitude will help one to have more quality hearing, actually. So yeah, the Srimad Bhagavatam is, we could go on, because basically the glories of the Bhagavatam are also the glories of Krishna, are also the glories of the devotees, and we cannot glorify the Bhagavatam without going into this, without going into the glories of Krishna and the glories of the devotees. And that's what Shoulda Vyasadev says in today's verse that we read. He says, what's the need of any other scripture? Because it gives us everything. And anyway, I just wanted to speak a little bit about this because it's very the Srimad Bhagavatam is by Krishna's mercy, I'm hearing with some devotees the Bhagavatam on weekends. Like we have some online class and goes on for 3 hours, and I notice it just passes so quickly. Like, at first I was like, oh my god, 3 hours. Sometimes I have Bhagavatam class and you feel like after a little bit of time you feel asleep or something. But no, when there's dynamic, conversation between devotees, and when the speaker himself is actually inspired by the subject matter, then it becomes so nectarian. 3 hours pass, and then you're like, you gotta go like to, other things. So anyway, maybe we can now hear from some devotees in Ottawa who also have some nice realization about the glories of hearing from the Bhagavatam. So I would be happy to hear from other devotees. So yes, thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Samuel Prabhu. Thank you. Very nice enlivening class about glories of Srimad Bhagavatam. Dear devotees, guests, if you have any questions, please raise your hand, or at the temple just ask if you would like to. Oh, we have Mata Jayan. Please go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Samuel Prabhu. Merci beaucoup pour ta lecture. It is always so rich, and there's always such a nice flow to your lectures. It's nectarian, so thank you. I have a question, and it's about your friend, the other devotee that you spoke about him. Sorry, in the beginning. Is he here? Had you share what you shared with us with him, and how does he feel now? If so, how does he feel with about the Srimad Bhagavatam?
Hare Krishna. Interesting question. Yeah, that's that's a good point actually. Did I tell him what I told you? That's the point. No, I didn't. Because actually that's a very important. Actually, no, he was just there for 2 days and then he went back because there's a very important point that Prabhupada makes in his purport, and then I will just touch at the end also. Is that also it depends also on our attitude. Devotees, they don't feel naturally, inclined to like, try to instruct someone who really doesn't feel like being, instructed. So anyway, I won't get into like the particular detail of this nice devotee, but that's the point. The point is that you can see not even, our attitude, it won't even, just impact how the Bhagavatam and Krishna will reciprocate with us, but it also impacts how the devotees will reciprocate with us. So I mean, if devotees, they feel that if they tell something to this person, he's just gonna like try to fight back or something, then naturally they don't feel like so inspired to share this. So, but anyway, I pray that by chanting, and that's the point. Even if you chant and you go again through the Bhagavad Gita, then naturally at some point you're gonna understand, that Bhagavad Gita says this, that we should become absorbed. Man mana bhava mad bhakto. We should think of Krishna. But think of what? Like just think of his philosophical instruction? No, there's other things. So that's the Bhagavatam goes into. It goes into these deeper aspects. So, but yeah, let's pray for him. Pray for me also.
Merci.
Hare Krishna, Samuel Prabhu. Prabhuji, this is Varun here. Thank you very much for this wonderful class. So I just want to use glorifying the Bhagavatam today. So just want to know from you, what should be the mood when we are reading the Bhagavatam and how to maintain the consistency, because most of the time we lost the track of consistency in reading Bhagavatam. So if you can enlighten us with your words regarding the mood and how we can be consistent with it.
Hare Krishna. Yep, I noticed that Varun Prabhu was not in Montreal, so I was thinking he's probably going to be in the class in Ottawa. On Sunday, he's either here or there. So thank you for your question. The mood it's kind of 2 points you were saying, the mood of when approaching the Bhagavatam, and also how we can be more consistent. Let's say, like, to address first this point about consistency. One important thing is to read in association of devotees. That's, in Montreal, in temples which are like open every day, then we have the Bhagavatam class, which is what Prabhupada started. And Prabhupada was very particular about this, because there's one instance Jayadvaita Maharaj was recalling that, because we all know how Prabhupada was so particular about the printing and distribution of books. And there was one temple, Prabhupada was there. And so they were having the program, RT and then class. There was barely no devotees. And Prabhupada, he asked one devotee, he said, where are the devotees? And this devotee, he told Srila Prabhupada that, he said, actually, they're in the printing press, and they're printing your books, And Srila Prabhupada actually, there's someone that's trying to get in this room. Sorry, I'm just giving a class, online class, sorry. Sorry about that. Because I'm in the temple kind of public library, which I locked. But yeah, the thing, Prabhupada, when he heard that the devotees, they were not at the program and they were working in the printing press, surprisingly enough, he was not very happy. He said, what's the use of printing all these books if devotees, they cannot come together, and chant and hear together? And actually, that's a very important point, because it's all nice reading and so on, but the point is that we're living in Kali Yuga. The process is not, japa. It's not to chant alone. And so, no, the process is congregational chanting of the holy name. So the Yuga Dharma is Harinam Sankirtan. So Sankirtan means that we chant together. So in the same way, if we want to get absorbed, the good thing is to read together. And so that's why there's Bhagavatam classes. I mean, you have Bhagavatam class in Ottawa online. And I mean, it's nice, but then there's interaction. And when it gets interactive, then we become very, very alert and more attentive. And then when sometimes even we're asked to speak, it is like also a very nice absorption. Actually, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says better than hearing Bhagavatam is speaking Bhagavatam. Then we can say it's not fair because there's only one Vyasasan and there's more people listening than speaking. But anyway, that's the thing. That's why we have to have also an interactive part in the Bhagavatam class and a sort of rotation of those who speak. But Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, even better than speaking Bhagavatam is engaging others in speaking Bhagavatam. We get more purified by doing this. So thank you for making me speak like this. You're getting more purified than me. But yeah, but concerning this other point of how the mood, I mean, it's the same mood that we approach, you know, Krishna, that we approach the holy name, that we approach the spiritual master. It's a mood of Trinada Pisunichena, a mood of humility. And yeah, to the degree that we make advancement also, to the degree that we realize the glories of the holy name, we're also going to realize the glories of the Bhagavatam, because we're going to realize increasingly how both, you know, they go together. And but yeah, a mood of, you know, of humility and ultimately devotion. So yeah. Anyway, I hope that.
The reason why I ask you, Prabhu, this question, because there might be sometimes some devotees are reading the Bhagavatam just to gain the knowledge. And I was listening to one senior devotee. He was saying sometimes when you're reading Bhagavatam in the mood to get this knowledge, and we become egoistic and puffed up about all this knowledge we have gained. So that's why I was just trying to get the perspective that is it the mood that we need to gain this knowledge, or just to increase our devotion toward Krishna and get more absorbed in service?
Yeah, but I mean, good point. Prabhupada used to say that he had some, who was the devotee who approached him? Anyway, I don't remember. There was a devotee who approached him and said, "Oh, Prabhupada, the devotees, they're criticizing me. They say that I don't know enough Sanskrit verses." And Prabhupada said, "Yeah, sounds like my god brothers." So that, you know, some of them was very, very scholarly. Of course, that's not the goal. Then at the same time, you know, it shouldn't become an excuse that, oh, I I don't want to be a scholar or something. You know, then I just want, the process is chanting, is kirtan. So, you know, it's not about just being a pandit. No, the point, Rupa Goswami says in the Nectar of Instruction, he says we should not give up the rules, but we should understand what's the essence of. At the same time, we should, follow the rules, but understand what's the essence of the rule. So one of the rule, Rupa Goswami says 5 processes of devotional service, the more important. One of them is Bhagavatam. So a serious devotee in the line of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he has to get into the Bhagavatam. But then he has to also do it in proper consciousness. And it's not, Bhagavatam is meant to be relished. We said the 3rd verse of the Bhagavatam establishes that. So it's not meant, you're not meant to relish, your knowledge. You're meant to relish the kata itself. So, yeah, anyway, that could be a whole topic of discussion. That's nice points you're making.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Any other comments, questions?
Hare Krishna, Samuel Prabhu, thank you very much for your usual inspiring class, and you have been steadily reading and participating all programs at the temple, so therefore it's easy for you to relate the process of reading Srimad Bhagavatam and at the same time doing practical service. In fact, Bhagavatam itself says, we daily chant this verse before the beginning of Bhagavatam class, Nashtaprayasha Bhadreshu, Nityam Bhagavati Sevya, Bhagavati Uttam Sloke, Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. By regularly attending Srimad Bhagavatam, attending means listening, participating, and rendering service to pure devotee. In this case, we are all serving Srila Prabhupada, even so indirectly. By Prabhupada, serving Prabhupada mission, we are actually serving Srila Prabhupada. Serving his instruction, we are serving Srila Prabhupada. So therefore, by rendering service to pure devotee, all that is inauspicious or troublesome, all this troublesome to the heart is eradicated, and loving service to the Lord is established as irrevocable fact. So sometime what can happen is we may take it as a routine of reading this sloka. Then we will miss the point. I think we should approach every day as a fresh day, a new day to learn something from Srimad Bhagavatam. The same way, even the slokas must be recited. The same spirit. Oh, there is something I want to learn from this sloka. We're reciting and reading its meaning. So this will actually help us, in absorbing in the right mood of reading and relishing Srimad Bhagavatam. So that's, we already answered that to some extent. I also have another point I want to have clarification. Although Srimad Bhagavatam is definitely, ultimately it's about recognizing our eternal relationship with the Lord, and then the relishing that relationship in different manner. Of course, that's the higher stages of our advancement. But nonetheless, can you also throw some light on why there are other topics are also included? For example, starting with the 10 subject matters in Srimad Bhagavatam, elemental creation, secondary creation, and planetary systems, and etc. And eventually, of course, it talks about liberation, mukti, and as well as ashraya. So can you add a little bit, throw some light on that?
Yes, Prabhu, very, very nice point. Actually, Srila Prabhupada, in one purport of the Bhagavatam, he quotes Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, and he says that the devotees, they're not interested only in hearing the confidential pastimes of Krishna, like Ras Leela and so on, but they're also very much interested, and we can see because in the early Bhagavatam, like I was explaining earlier, Shonaka Rishi and the sages of Naimisharanya, when they approached Shoulda Goswami, one of their questions, they were wondering about the Purusha avatars. So like you were explaining, how Krishna is very much also involved in this, all the material affairs. And this is one important point why this is important to understand is that so that our understanding of who is Krishna may not be superficial. Because we can hear about Krishna's pastimes, all his sweet loving exchanges with his devotees, not only in his Vrindavan pastime, but even in different avatars like this. But the point is that if we stop reading and we go outside in the world and we're not able to connect Krishna to everything that's going on in the world, then it just means that we fall in Maya when we're not sitting in front of Bhagavatam in our, reading room or so on, or whatever. So why this is taught, a lot of the Bhagavatam is speaking about creation and how Krishna is within everything, he's within the heart and all these things, is that so when we go outside, we're able to see everything in relationship to Krishna. And also in the Bhagavatam, there's a lot of talk about how perverse material energy is and how, crazy, a life of sense gratification is. And that's explained in so many different ways. So that, yeah, when we are in the world, then we can see everything in relationship to the Bhagavatam. We can see, a tree, and we understand that actually inside there is a soul who is very much covered, that's actually much more covered than even humans and animals, because of his previous actions. And now you can, so devotees, they're able to connect everything like this because of all the knowledge that's in the Bhagavatam. But ultimately, all these connections they're able to make is that so gradually, like Prabhupada explains in one purport of Nectar of Instruction, he says that so that gradually they can increase their remembrance of Krishna, because they're able to understand in every situation how everything is connected to Krishna. And this is really not superficial, actually. It's Krishna reveals this in our heart by, like you were saying, the process of hearing and the process of engaging in devotional service and obtaining the mercy of Guru, Krishna, the Vaishnavas. Then when we're doing these things, we get this sort of divine vision. And then whatever happens, because of we have this knowledge of how everything is connected to Krishna, then we can increase our remembrance of Krishna. And that's the goal of everything. Rupa Goswami explains. There's two rules. There's so many rules and regulations. Hearing Bhagavatam is one, but ultimately, if our hearing of the Bhagavatam doesn't increase our remembrance of Krishna and doesn't reduce our forgetfulness of Krishna, then it's not really useful. But so that's why we have to go deep in all the sections of Bhagavatam. And Prabhupada was saying in the purport we read today, it means starting from the beginning of the Bhagavatam, not starting from the 10th canto, starting from the beginning of the Bhagavatam and going through these chapters, which speaks about all sorts of things. And then we'll be able to have a vision which is kind of all encompassing. And yeah, anyway, there's more to say about this, but yeah, it's a very important point you're making, Prabhu.
Yeah, that's true, actually. The challenge is actually to remember, actually, we tend to forget as soon as we step out of the temple or step out of our home. And we've been maybe very attentive in doing our morning sadhana and things like that, but the moment we step out, it happens to me. So it's a common practice, a common experience, I think, for many of us. We don't remember Krishna. We tend to forget because we get carried away. As you say, the material energy is very strong. So therefore, even we may try to remember, it can perhaps last for another 10, 15 minutes, but certainly after about an hour with material interaction with the material modes, I think very, very, very likely that we'll forget Krishna. So I think that's very important. Somehow to remember Krishna always. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees. If there are no more questions or comments, I would like to thank Samuel Prabhu for helping us to develop faith in the importance of Srimad Bhagavatam. Thank you very much for another nice class. So the next part of our program is a couple of announcements about one of the most important months for our society, which is December next month, when we have Srila Prabhupada's marathon, when devotees are distributing his books all over the world, and also Advent of Bhagavad Gita took place in December. So I would like to ask Mandal Prabhu to speak about that, our Sankirtan leader here in Ottawa.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much, Samuel Prabhu. Yeah, it's always wonderful to hear about the glories of the Bhagavatam. And now at ISKCON Ottawa, we're in the process of glorifying the Bhagavad Gita, which this month it's known as the Live to Give Marathon, where devotees are banding together to get Bhagavad Gitas out the door. We've made a pledge here at ISKCON Ottawa to get out 60 boxes of Bhagavad Gitas, which equals about 1,440 Gitas. And how we're doing that is we're connecting with motels, hospitals, schools, libraries, yoga studios, and family members, friends of families, and just getting out the Bhagavad Gitas to everyone. So worldwide, ISKCON, or the Hare Krishna movement, our goal is to do 2.2 million Bhagavad Gitas. So we're taking a very small fraction of that, but something that we think we can definitely achieve. So ultimately, we're asking if any devotees are interested in sponsoring boxes of Bhagavad Gitas, or maybe taking some home themselves and distributing to their friends, families, or if they have any innovative ideas by where we can also share the Gitas. We would be so happy to connect with you. So we have at the back of the temple, for anyone who's in-house, a table set up. You'll see it with the Bhagavad Gita, and Sahil, one of the devotees there, he'll just be there to answer any questions. For sponsoring one box of Bhagavad Gitas, it's $150. The small price of that. People spend that almost on lunch every day. So yeah, if one's interested, if you'd like to sponsor a full case, 2 cases, 10 cases, we got the man at the back. And yeah, we'd love to be able to connect with that. So thank you, Prabhu, so much for listening, and let's live to give. Give the greatest gift of all, which is the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. And Krishna's words directly will affect the heart of anyone who takes home the Bhagavad Gita and reads it. So, Hare Krishna.
Mandaram Prabhu, would you like to say a couple of words about next week monthly Sankirtan festival?
Oh yeah, and this is another program that we're doing for distributing the Bhagavad Gitas. It's going to get together with all devotees, and we're going to hit the streets, which means we're going to just go have fun. The motto is we're just going to touch the pavement. So really, it's just going out with a bunch of really cool personalities, friends within the temple, and we're going to go share Bhagavad Gitas with people. We get so much wonderful response that people really intrigued. And just like Samuel Prabhu was saying about how they go out and they'll do some chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra in the streets, and people just become attracted to it. They're appreciating it. So we're going to go do the same thing. So anyone who's interested in that is really fun. So highly recommended for everyone to come along, and it'll be a fuel in your spiritual life. It'll really make one enthusiastic and excited to share this wisdom more. So we'll be doing that next Sunday. And just a humble request from Bhakta Samuel, if you guys can also encourage the devotees there to get on board with this Live to Give marathon. I saw the pledges this morning across all of North America, Canada, and I saw Montreal could do pretty big. So humble request. So thank you, Prabhu, and thank you everyone in the temple for coming and hearing the announcements. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mandaram Prabhu. So that's pretty much it. Adisham Prabhu, could you please take over from here? Probably you will have more kirtan and prasadam.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. And yes, we're going to have kirtan after we serve prasadam.